everybody, and welcome to AlertFind trainings. In today's session, we'll be taking a look at how to populate the roster template that we send to you on the first interaction with our onboarding team. Today, we'll be taking a look at all the different fields that you will be able to populate in the roster file in order to present that information to the AlertFind onboarding team through your Customer Success Manager. And we can proceed to create your instance and populate it with the information that you will be providing. Let's take a look at the actual template and see how is it structured. The first worksheet is called the user record, and here is where you will be spending most of the time in today's video, since I will be explaining all the different sections of this particular worksheet. The second worksheet is the field definition, and it's there to explain basically the first worksheet. So if you need to see the text version of what I'm going to explain, you can take a look at this one. On the third worksheet, we have a CSV example. Once you have the first worksheet completely filled up, and you save it as a CSV file, this is how it's going to look. You can proceed to send that CSV file to your Customer Success Manager in order to have your instance created. Let's begin with the User Records worksheet. Here, the first two columns, A and B, are the only two mandatory fields that are required in this entire worksheet. Everything else can be customizable to be specific to your company's needs. In column A, we have the account ID. The account ID is basically the username that you will be using to log into the system through the user interface. Therefore, it needs to be a unique identifier for each individual user. Many of our customers do prefer to use the work email address as their unique identifier, and others prefer to use their employee number. If your company wishes to use the employee number, you can definitely use it. For example, if your employee number is 1234, then your unique ID would be 1234, and you would have to add at your company domain. The reason for that is that the system does require the unique ID have an email format, even though it's not a real email address. The second mandatory field that we have here is the name. The full name can be added in one single column, like this. Or you can go ahead and provide first name, middle name, and last name in 3 separate columns. All you will have to do is to add the new columns and title them accordingly. We can definitely populate your system with either of those formats. However, it is important that each user that you add to AlertFind have a name and a unique ID. That being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the next set of fields available for you. From column C all the way to column Q, we have all the different types of devices that you can configure in the system for you to be able to communicate with your users. Here are some devices examples. Again, these are completely customizable. The devices that you decide to configure will depend on your company's specific use cases. For instance, if you decide that you are not going to be using faxes to send out communications, then you can delete that entire column from the final worksheet that you send us, and that's perfectly fine. If you are only going to be using, for instance, work email address and cell phones, you can delete all of the others, so we can have as many or as few devices configured as required based on your use cases. The ones that we have added to this template are just some examples of devices that we have configured for other customers. The examples listed here are business email addresses, personal cell phones, work cell phones, SMS phones, etc. The difference between the field called personal cell phone and SMS phone is that a personal cell phone would be a voice call, and the SMS phone would be a text message to the same cell phone. The home phone is usually referenced to a direct line number as well as the alternate phone and the fax. In this section, from columns J through M, we have the work phone numbers. If your work phone number is a direct line, all you will need to provide is the different work phone numbers or direct lines for each one of your users, and the system will send the communication directly to them. However, if your company employs a PBX system, then usually each PBX system has its own set of keys that need to be hit for you to be able to get to a specific office. In columns K, L, and M, you can provide any additional information that's required for the system to dial into the correct office. Here, you have the standard phone number, and then some system will say, press 9 to get to the corporate directory. So, you will press 9. Once you're in the corporate directory, it would say, if you know the person's extension, please dial it now. Then, you will go ahead and type in the extension. Other systems say, type in the extension and then press the pound key. So this third column will allow you to put any additional keystrokes that are required to be placed after the extension number. Again, this is completely modifiable based on your specific PBX system. And if you are only using direct lines, then you don't need to provide any of those additional fields at all. And you can go ahead and just delete the columns from the final file that you are going to send back to your assigned Customer Success Manager. Next section here is pagers. Now, a lot of companies no longer use pagers. However, in the health industry, there is still a law in the United States that does not allow their doctors, nurses, or their aides to have a cell phone inside the operating room, but they can have pagers. Therefore, if you do need to configure pages for your users, please provide us with the pager number, pager PIN, pager type, whether it's alphanumeric or just numeric, and the pager service provider. This next section, highlighted in light gray, is your custom fields. Custom fields in AlertFind are really important, since they are used to create the different distribution lists that you can use in AlertFind to be able to target or pinpoint the communications that you are going to be sending out. In other words, to which specific users you want to send your communications to. For instance, let's say that you have an office in Chicago and you want to send out a communication only to your employees or users in the Chicago office. Then, you could definitely need to provide us the city information in the roster import file. This can be used to create a distribution list for you that would use that criteria, city equals Chicago. And in this way, you will be able to send the communication only to those people assigned to this office.
All of these columns are different examples that we are providing for different types of custom fields that other customers have tasked us to configure for them. Again, this should be based on your specific needs and use cases. You can have as many as you need since there is no limit to the amount of custom fields that we can configure for you. If you do not provide any custom fields, you could create broadcast groups and escalation groups directly in the user interface. However, you would not be able to create smart groups.
So, let's take a look at some of these examples. For instance, department, location, region, state, country, city, job title, and group floor. Since the ones listed here are only examples, and if you need to create a specific one that is not listed here, you can add them as well. For instance, we have a specific customer that provides a perk to their employees, which is to have their car washed every Friday. In that case, they created a distribution list called Car Wash, and a communication is sent out every Thursday afternoon, and each individual can respond back to sign up for the car wash service. As you can see, the custom fields are completely customizable based on your company's specific use cases. The custom fields that are created for you will depend on the specific use cases that you are going to have. Therefore, you would definitely need to think about this and brainstorm with the rest of your team to decide which custom fields you want to create in AlertFind. The next section from column AA and AB show the teams. In AlertFind, we do have a functionality called Teams, which would allow you to subsegment your user base as well as create a hierarchy within the permissions. You have three main roles in AlertFind. You have the admin, who has access to all information, users, who only have access to their individual information, and team leaders, who can have access to the specific permission that an admin would assign to him or her. If you want teams or these subsegments of your user base to be created on import, then you can definitely provide that information here in these columns. In column AA, you can add the supervisor or team leader for the specific team that you wished us to create on import. We will be taking a look at teams and how to manage them in depth in our admin training. So, if you don't want to create them with the roster import, then you can definitely wait for the admin training to be completed and create the teams at that time. If you don't want to create teams during the initial roster import, then all you will have to do is to delete the columns from your final file, like this. All of these additional fields from AA to AE are basically optional fields that you can go ahead and provide for the system. For instance, if you want to create the web password for each individual user, you can do that here. The other option is to have the system generate a temporary password for them. Once they log in for the first time, they will be able to change it to their own. You can also provide on import the hotline pin, the time zone, and the status. The status could be active or inactive. If you assign a user as inactive, basically what you're saying is that they will be part of the system, but they will not be receiving any communications until you activate them. In regards to the role, it can be either admin or a user. As I mentioned before, an admin would have complete rights over the system, and a user would only be able to access their personal information and modify it. So let's recap. From column R to Z, we have all the custom fields that you can configure. These are just examples, of course, and you can configure as many of them as you wish for your system. There is no limit to the amount of custom fields that we can configure for you. From column C to Q, we have the different examples of devices that you can configure in the system. Those devices can be used to send out communications to your different users. And finally, columns A and B are the only two mandatory fields: account ID and the name. Remember, the account ID needs to be a unique identifier for each user. One thing that I should mention is that the minimum length required for a password is 8 characters. If you have any additional questions regarding how to fill out the roster import file, do reach out to your assigned Customer Success Manager, and they will be able to provide guidance and answer any questions that you might have. Thank you very much for watching this video, and have a great day.